I'm Bradley Vincent, curator at HOTA Gallery on the Gold Coast. HOTA Gallery is thrilled to be supporting local artists to make new work. Next year, we'll be putting 20 local artists and artist collectives on display on the largest stage that's ever been available in the city. When we called for submissions, we asked for artists to submit a proposal of their choosing. What has emerged in the 20 selected artists is a real connection to place. There is, amongst them, a rich interest in nature and the environment. Also, a reflection on development and our human impact on the environment and what we extract from it. And, optimistically, a look at the individual in relation to nature and how we might find space for reflection in the world around us. In this podcast series, members of the HOTA Youth Advisory Group will sit down for a one-on-one with these artists to talk about their practice, their background, and the work they're making for HOTA in 2021.
So today we're joined with Laurie Oxenford, Isaac, Jacob and Lachlan Hoff from JIL Studio. Rolls off the tongue beautifully, doesn't it? So we were thinking it'd be a great idea to bring artists that are going to be in the exhibition next year to open the HOTA Gallery and Youth Advisory Group artists together in conversation. So that's why we're here today. So I thought it'd be good if we kick-started a conversation with talking a bit about describing our work and what we do. Do you guys want to go first?
Yeah. Our work, I guess this is our first project together, but it's about place and looking at the topography of what was, like on the Gold Coast and in particular the site at HOTA. And so using native plants and also structures that people can interact with to hopefully teach them about those plants and let them see, you know, the beauty of those and the positive effects they can have in their garden and also sort of in the wider public realm.
So you're saying it's the first project that you've worked on together. Have you been working previously, like in a more casual fashion, or did something happen where you kind of went, we should actually bring these ideas together, put an expression of interest in and start working more formally together as a group?
It was actually Isaac.
Yeah, I guess it was mainly because Jake's, like, he's been working as an architect for like a little while now. How long? Like 2 years sort of in practice situation. But I guess I've always done a little bit of graphic design and then just recently finished my bachelor. So then I went into full-time work and Locke's always been into plants and then he's just been doing regen and always loved native plants and everything. So I guess Jake had the idea of joining it all together because I guess there's not many studios where there's a graphic designer and a horticulturist and an architect all under one roof and also all brothers. So I guess that was a funny combo. So I sort of coined the name of JIL just to do with our names, and then I guess it sort of went from there and went from Jake's idea of the whole exhibition and everything. So yeah.
What about you, Laurie? Can you talk a bit about yourself and your work?
Well, I am an emerging artist and curator and public art producer, so I dabble across all three spaces, and I think my practice tends to blend a lot of the time. But I work primarily with recycled industrial materials, so my practice is very material focused and object focused and context focused. So I take objects from where I find them to my studio and then recontextualize them to create new ideas and things like that. So I'm very interested in the way that your different practices work together, from ideas to objects, and then moving that into the public space is very interesting to me. So yeah.
Is there a person within the three of you that kind of brings an idea to the table, or could you talk a little bit about like how you work together? I know being brothers that a bunch of that is probably subconscious and unspoken. But how have you gone about, I know it's early days, but how are you approaching like working together?
It's been really interesting so far. I guess the idea was, it seems like it was born from one person, but it's all that there's always been those inputs from everyone else. Like, I mean, a lot of the shapes have been informed by Isaac's graphic design sort of expertise and sort of looking at how they look, not just on plan, but also how they'll look in a space, which is really interesting. And also Locke's knowledge of plants have really shaped how the built form of this structure is taking shape, it's been really interesting coming from, I guess, working in architecture where it's very introverted and you're working with architects or engineers and things that are they're all on the same plane, whereas working with completely different people with different expertise like that are outside of that realm has been really interesting, and it's been really insightful, and also I guess it's been a really good process so far. I can't really put my finger on how we're generating those ideas, but it's at the moment it's sort of just rolling on its own, like I guess challenges being thrown up, and then we're just sort of working through those at each the different steps along the way.
I think it helps that we have kind of like pretty similar ideas of this kind of stuff we want to make and what we want to be kind of saying with our work and stuff like that. So it seems fairly easy when we all get together and we kind of work through issues and stuff. And whether it's either one of our disciplines kind of informing which way that decision should go, sort of thing.
Do you have some questions, Laurie?
Yeah, I have a lot of questions.
Let's go. I'll put my paper down.
So can you tell me about the process of, like, obviously you're saying that the work is a combination of plants and structures and good design. Can you tell me how that idea came together for you guys conceptually? Like, you obviously designed it for the HOTA application. Can you tell me a little bit more about the thought process behind that work? Obviously keeping the details a little bit secret for obvious reasons.
Because Isaac, we sort of found out about the open call pretty late on. Like it was like literally probably a week before it was sort of coming in. But we've sort of been thinking about these ideas a lot before, like integrating plants into structures or other things like that. And so we sort of came up with the concept of looking at the lost topography or the topography of that land that once was, and then from there sort of trying to integrate all of our knowledges equally in the structure, so it's not one overpowering sort of structure over plants or plants over or shapes over something else. We're trying to keep it very even, and that's sort of been working really well so far in generating something that we hope will work.
Cool. Can I ask another question?
Of course.
I guess for you, I think a lot about what you're talking about is about creating place as well. So the combination of nature and built form and like urban spaces and nature. What makes a place for you guys?
It's such a personal question because place is so different to everyone. Like I think some people will see their house as place, and that's that's sort of almost the quintessential place is like your home or your own personal space that you go into. But I don't know, I see place more as like the natural environment. And I think we sort of all share that thinking that it's not the structure, it's more about what's there and the external factors like the weather and the plants and things like that are placed, like more of a link to land.
So the surroundings make that home special, I think. Like it's not the house itself, it's like where it is and what's around
its
it.
connection to nature.
People have come before it and all that.
Wow, that's really beautiful. So what does community and public art mean in the context of your practices? Because I know you create buildings and built forms through architecture, and Isaac works in regeneration, and then you create things through graphic design. So how does that feed into community and community experiences in the public space?
Yeah, that's actually such a good question. I guess coming into this, we sort of did have that was almost in the back. It was more so like the message that we wanted was at the forefront.
Yeah.
That's how I sort of interpreted it. But I guess we like melded certain elements within, like when we were conceptualizing it, that we would have interactivity with the community and those sorts of things. But maybe it was that the direction we were heading from the start. Hey,
I guess that was also born from your sort of expertise. Like, how do you convey those ideas? Like, if it is just a structure, and I mean, you can people can sort of read into that what they will, but without sort of visual prompts or, in Isaac's sense, like if there's ways that we can imbue, information into the structure so people can interact with it, but it's not really like glaringly in your face. Like, I think there's something interesting in that, and I don't think it's a really hard thing to, I think, do that successfully. And I don't know if we'll do that successfully this time, but it'd be a really cool thing to have, be able to have people interact with something and learn subconsciously almost, or just by
experience,
by visual cues or things like that, rather than it being like written or like, really obvious big plaques or you sort of telling them what it's about. Yeah.
How do you think the audience might interact with the work, or do you have an idea of an outcome in your heads about how that might play out, being a public realm work too?
Yeah, we're hoping, I think kids would probably like to climb on it, and then we're hoping that, I guess, kids will climb on it and maybe their parents will go and look, and as they get closer to it, then, if we develop ways to keep pulling them in closer to the structure, be that through particular like feature plants that will draw their eye and catch them and draw them in, and then once they start getting closer, having smaller sort of wayfinding on the structure or things like that. That would be sort of, I guess, the dream, if people would come and sit on it and actually sort of engage with, what we're trying to get across. But it will be tricky though.
Yeah, and it's an unknown, isn't it? When you can have...
I think it's so hard to predict how people are going to actually interact and experience it. But
yeah,
I guess that's why you create the work in the first place.
Yeah.
Is there a reason you chose to create a work for the outdoor space rather than the gallery?
I guess that was probably maybe more so because Jake's background was in architecture, and maybe he's done some installations before, sort of outside installations, and I guess that was maybe a bit more backing to do another outdoor one. And I think maybe as a joint sort of venture, it made more sense for us, didn't it, to sort of be
but I guess also with the plants, like, and having it in that place, instead of it being inside a space, it's sort of more connected to that place, I think, being outside and on it rather than inside and detached. And I think that in a lot of ways would have detached the structure and
the
also
whole feeling and everything
and the meaning behind it.
I think as well, like, that type of work is like maybe more approachable, so maybe more people will get to experience it, like even if they just go and sit on it, like that's kind of cool. Rather than like it's kind of got that utility as well as sort of
and there's a talk a lot of the time about the people that inhabit the spaces at HOTA, and how outside there is that real recreational public, whether it's attending the markets or using the lake or the barbecue facilities. And one of the things I find a challenge for having people access the gallery is, like, for a lot of people it's this physical barrier, it's this white cube space, and it's not for me.
It can be very intimidating, especially when you don't understand contemporary art or whatever it is.
How do I kind of navigate that space, or it's not for me? So there's something beautiful about placing an object that's well designed and thought through in that public space where people can't, whether they stumble across it or they seek it out.
I guess there's no judgment when it's outside. You can pretty much make whatever comment you want about it, and nobody's going to be in a gallery and hear you say a comment, or you can interact with it whichever way you want, you know what I mean? It's not like when you're standing in front of a painting and you I don't know, even if it's three-dimensional, you're just sort of, I guess, just looking onto a wall, and whereas when it's a structure, you can
it gives the opportunity for it to take on another life as well.
Totally.
Like, that's completely different to what you imagined, which would be something really cool.
I think the functional side of your work is a really nice way for people who aren't so connected to maybe the art world, have an entry point or a way to interact with it that's different to people who are already in that art space.
Well, I guess for me at the moment, what I'm most passionate about is just native plants and conservation of native spaces, of natural areas. Like, I feel like it's undervalued and misunderstood, and Yeah.
You're flying the education flag.
Yeah.
Public lands are planted with plants from somewhere else. Like that to me
Yeah,
is just insane.
totally.
Like it makes no sense. And then they spend like millions and millions of
Maintaining
dollars
it.
like getting rid of these plants that they've brought in and they're planting on public land. Like
Yeah.
it's maddening.
Man.
It is.
No, I don't
He's
know.
very passionate about, I think,
a bit too much so.
when he comes home sometimes, did you see that weed in that person's front yard? Or like we'll just be walking to go get groceries or something. That's whatever it is, and then he'll pull it out and we'll just be walking down the road and I'm like, what? Yeah.
What about you, Jacob?
I think what inspires me at the moment is, I think the Gold Coast, the built environment at the moment is something really inspiring. It's in a real state of change, and I think people with new ideas coming in and looking at it and like different ways of approaching it that aren't sort of what has been done on the coast for a long time, and there's a lot of potential there, I think, and like it's very exciting. And I mean, yeah, it'd be really good if things that we learned from this structure could play into, you know, wider public works or into other you know, things in the built environment. But at the moment, yeah, I think just the coast in general is in a really exciting place, and that's sort of really inspiring to try and to keep up with that and try to be at the front of it and sort of pushing your ideas and hopefully sort of learning from that and bettering the place.